This week's task is for you to have a go at using your watercolour pencils. Those of you who received the art pack before lockdown, you will have got watercolour pencils as part of that. If you didn't receive the art pack, please don't worry. If you don't have watercolour pencils, please don't worry. Your task this week then is to create another colour pencil study. My project is on natural forms. We're spending a lot of time at the moment looking out the windows at the birds, feeding on the bird feeders, and so I wanted to incorporate them into my project because they're such a big part of life right now during the lockdown. So I've chosen this one. It's quite beautiful with the blue and the gold, and I thought the texture of the feathers would work really nicely playing with the watercolour pencils. The first thing I'd like you to do is get your watercolour pencils out and have a play with them. The colours that they become when activated can be quite different to the colours that they look like on the actual pencil. You can do this quite quickly and quite roughly, or you could draw a grid out like I have here. For each box, I've shaded a gradient of the colour, starting very dark at one end and getting lighter and lighter. I've then used a paintbrush and water to activate the watercolour pencil, starting from the light end and working to the darker end, pushing the pigment towards the more concentrated end. If you look closely at my grid, you can see that I've written down numbers underneath each colour. This is the number you can find on your watercolour pencil, which meant later when I wanted to use one of the colours, it was really quick to find the right pencil. Once you've experimented with your watercolour pencils, it's time to choose the image you want to work from. The most important thing when choosing your image is to choose one that is relevant to your project, to your title. We really want you now to start thinking about what your investigation is going to be on, what your project is going to be on. We've had some lovely ideas coming through of people who are interested in looking at dreams and how people are dreaming of nature during the lockdown, or how the effect that nature has on our mental health. There are some people who are just looking at patterns and shapes and colours within nature, and that's absolutely fine as well. For me, I started out on houseplants, and I'm now really interested in looking at the form and the colour of more tropical, structural plants and flowers. But I want to incorporate the delicacy of songbirds, of British songbirds into that as well. So that's really where I'm thinking of going with mine. So I found this image. I have found it online. I don't have any good pictures of these birds. Please also have a look at the photo store. That is found in the shared area, the art department part of the shared area on the student side. So you should be able to access it. There's lots of pictures on there. Okay, sketch out your image nice and lightly. I did mine from my iPad. Once I draw my image, I really looked at the colours in my photograph. Now what immediately came to mind for me was on the bottom of the bird, there's this darken yellow, where the yellow feathers are darker, they're in shadow. Now, traditionally, if you use the complementary colour, you can darken a colour without muddying it. So for yellow, it would be purple, that's opposite to yellow on the colour wheel. And you can see here, I've drawn down some purple, I've activated it with the water. I also tried some brown, and then I also tried black as well, because we're experimenting. So we're trying to figure out how best to go about describing and recording the colours and textures on your image. Okay, so these initial experiments are for you to figure out any difficult areas on your photo, so that we're not doing that while we're completing our drawing. So once these colours were dry, I then went over it with the yellow, and I can see the purple's too strong. Very rarely would I ever suggest anyone doing this. I did actually think the black looked most true to the photograph, so I decided to use that. But I don't think that putting down black and then drawing the yellow over it was going to create the most effective result. So then I tried another experiment. In this one, I drew in the yellow first. I then activated it with water and let it dry completely. I went over with black, again short strokes describing the shape of the feathers, and then let that dry. Once that's dry, I then went back over with yellow, as you can see here, and I could start to feel that this was going to work and that I'd figured it out. So I first tidy up my image with a rubber, get rid of any hard lines. Ideally we don't want to be able to see our drawing underneath. Then, as I knew what I was doing with the yellow chest of the bird, I decided to start there. So I very lightly put down the yellow and then activated it with the water. So here I compared the top of the bird's head to my colour chart and chose the right blue. Now, as I'm trying to describe the feathers on the head, I quickly realised there that my pencil wasn't sharp enough, so I quickly sharpened it. But I sketch, or I hatch down in the direction of the feathers. And I don't put too much water on my brush here because I don't want to get rid of my pencil strokes completely. I want to keep some of that texture. I'm also making sure that each layer dries completely before I work on top of it. So you see I'm working around my drawing. Each layer is going on really faintly, really lightly at first. And this way, when you put on different layers of colours and they start to shine through each other, it's going to create some really interesting effects. On the back of the bird, on the top, there's this interesting grey, green, blue, and it's quite a difficult colour to achieve. But by layering up different colours such as blues and greys and greens and doing it lightly so they shine through each other, we'll be able to create something similar to that effect. Take your time with this, don't rush. If you feel yourself starting to rush to finish it and just get it done, then stop and take a break. It's really, really important that you aim for the highest quality that you can achieve, and that just means looking really, really carefully at your photograph and trying to copy the different colours and tones and textures that you see on it. It does take patience and it does take time. Put on an audiobook or some music, relax and enjoy it. Good luck, everyone.